Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Purdue won the Big Ten championship, winning 4 games in 4 days in Chicago. So it's a little bit of an emergency podcast of sorts. Usually, I do not do a Big Ten tournament recap podcast right away. I just do one big episode once the bracket is unveiled. But this was obviously a pretty big one. Purdue flips the script a little bit on its end to the regular season and wins the Big Ten tournament championship. So we're going to just kind of shoot from the hip here, talk for 20-30 minutes about what transpired up in the Windy City. If you don't already, be sure to follow the show on Twitter at Boilers Beyond. There's a ton to talk about, man. It's been a fun week engaging with you all, talking with you all about these 4 wins, projecting the bracket, all of that. Come join the conversation there. And if you're listening to this on Monday, send me questions. I'll do a preview recording Monday night of the NCAA tournament, talking Purdue versus Queens, talking about the West Regional, all of that good stuff. Send me questions there on Twitter at Boilers Beyond, or email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. And be sure to subscribe. You don't want to miss an episode during the NCAA tournament. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss a thing. But as I said, Purdue really flipped the script on what it did at the end of the regular season. I've always maintained that if you win the conference in the regular season, the Big Ten tournament is just kind of gravy at that point. You have already accomplished a pretty significant feat. This is not an easy conference to win in the regular season. Not that any conference necessarily is, but the Big Ten is not. It's a grind. It's 20 games. You have coast-to-coast travel now. You have very unbalanced scheduling. It is a grind, and it's a real accomplishment to win the Big Ten in the regular season. But if you don't, winning something is always better than winning nothing. It is simple as it is to say, but when you are Purdue, there are 3 ways to put a banner in the rafters of Mackey Arena from your season. You can win the Big Ten regular season, you can win the Big Ten tournament, or you can reach the Final Four. Purdue did not win the Big Ten in the regular season. Obviously, it finished tied for 6th and was the 7 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And a Final Four is a Final Four. You don't get that opportunity until the NCAA tournament starts, but it's obviously quite difficult to do so. This presented an opportunity for Purdue to really garner some momentum, get some positive vibes going, because at the end of the regular season, there wasn't a whole lot of it. Purdue lost 7 of its last 13 regular season games. It really struggled defensively. The performances against Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin were ugly. Ugly defensive showings and losses where Purdue was just giving up a ton of points. And even though Purdue has what is now the number 1 offense in the country in adjusted efficiency, according to KenPom, it wasn't able to win those games because when you get into shootouts, all of the little things really, really matter a lot. And Purdue wasn't good enough on the margins to win those games. But in this, it was the complete opposite. Purdue was awesome in the Big Ten tournament, and it looked the part of the team that was the preseason number 1 team in the country. It looked the part of a team with national championship aspirations. It was terrific. It started right away. Purdue dominated that first half against Northwestern. Purdue went into the locker room with a 45-21 lead. The game was that much of a blowout. Purdue absolutely dominated that thing. And while Northwestern scored in the second half, it made a lot of shots. It got some points up. It was what it was. The game was over, and Northwestern went on a little bit of a heater. Nick Martinelli was an awesome player who deserves all of the flowers that he got at the Big Ten tournament. What a cool story he had. That was awesome. But Purdue controlled that game really easily, and it was a fitting switch to flip because Northwestern really sucker punched Purdue out of the gate in that matchup in Evanston, and it was Purdue who sucker punched Northwestern right away. In all of these games, Purdue got off to awesome starts. It got off to a quick double-digit lead against Northwestern, Nebraska, UCLA. It didn't get up double digits quick against Michigan, but it got off to a really nice start. Purdue was feeling really good about itself in all of these games. And when you get into tournament play, especially as these rounds keep stacking up and these minutes and miles keep stacking up on these players' legs, make them come from behind. Make them fight. Make them do all of that, because you're putting yourself in a really good spot. And Purdue did. It was the same thing against Nebraska. Nebraska made a couple of pushes in the second half, but it never got all that close. Purdue won that game by 16 points. It was a definitive win. And then Purdue comes back against UCLA, and that game got weird, right? Because Tyler Bilodeau gets hurt in the Michigan State game. He's an 18-point-per-game scorer. So you're running a 18-hour prep, if that, on UCLA, really not knowing what they do without Tyler Bilodeau. It's that double-edged sword when guys get hurt. It's the backup quarterback syndrome, where sometimes you see that backup quarterback come in for the first time, and he lights it up because the defense doesn't know what he's going to do. You have a little bit of an idea, if he's a runner, if he's a passer, but you don't know exactly what he's capable of. So Purdue gets out there against UCLA, where there's no Tyler Bilodeau, and then Donovan Dent gets hurt in the first half, and you have UCLA playing a completely different way. It still has Sky Clark, it still had Trent Perry, Xavier Booker, it still had some of its key guys, but you're kind of put into a blender in a game where you didn't expect to be put into a blender. But Purdue handled it. Purdue trailed the game 2-0 and then never trailed again. I think UCLA got it tied in the second half at one point, and then Purdue finished really strong to get the win. And then it set up a rematch with Michigan that Purdue really wanted. Purdue really wanted that. When you have a competitive group of guys, and Michigan walked into Mackey Arena and really handled Purdue. Michigan is an awesome team. Michigan might not be the same team without LJ Kaysen. I don't know. It's strange to say about a bench guy, but he's a very good bench guy. He's a really good player. And Michigan has not been as dominant since he went down a few weeks ago. It's won all of its games except Purdue. It was the Illinois game. So it won its last two of the regular season, squeaked by Iowa, beat Michigan State, but then needs a late finish against Ohio State, needs a late shot against Wisconsin. Michigan wasn't quite the same team, hasn't quite been the same team. But what Purdue did in that game was so impressive. Michigan has one of the most formidable front lines in the country, with Adai Mara, with Merez Johnson, with Yaxel Lendenborg. Those guys are awesome. They're big. They're positionally big. Trey McKinney, Will Cheddar, Roddy Gale, Namari Burnett's not small. It's a really big team. And yet Purdue comes out and scores 80 points while only making 4 3-pointers against the number one defense in the country. It was mind-boggling to see Purdue do that. What a performance it was for Purdue. I guess we'll just kind of get into it here. Oscar Clough did not win the tournament MVP. It went to Braden Smith, and you could give it to a number of guys. You could probably make an argument for Fletcher Lawyer, too. But Oscar Clough was tremendous. He scores 21 points on 11 shots against Michigan. He and Trey Kaufman-Renn did the impossible in that game where they took it over. Purdue had the better front line in that game, and that's something you probably haven't been able to say about a team playing against Michigan all season. Trey Kaufman-Renn goes 10 of 15 from the floor, scores 20. Clough scores 21. You look at this tournament that Oscar Clough had. He leads Purdue in scoring against Michigan. He leads Purdue in scoring against UCLA. He scores 12 on on 8 shots, pulls down 9 rebounds against Nebraska, and he has 19 points and 10 rebounds against Northwestern. He was a monster. And what you've seen is a bit of a second wind for Oscar Clough, because it wasn't long ago. I think was it after the Michigan State game, maybe, where Matt Painter talked about Oscar Clough, only playing 5-minute stretches at a time or so because he was getting winded, because it was really starting to impact him. But Purdue needed him in the Big Ten tournament, and he plays 25 minutes against Michigan. Foul trouble was part of that. He goes 28 against UCLA, 34 against Nebraska, and 30 against Northwestern. And he didn't wear down. He didn't look tired. He didn't look beat out there. He rebounded at a really high level. He competed at a really high level. He brought the energy, and he was tremendous, just tremendous for Purdue in this event. As I said, if I were voting on the most outstanding player in that tournament, I would have given it to Oscar Clough. You can make an argument for Braden Smith. Again, he was fantastic. He is now 1 assist shy of tying Bobby Hurley's record, 2 assists away from breaking it. So in all likelihood, that will happen in the early stages of Friday night's game against Queens. And Purdue going on this run was very helpful for him there, because now it's a formality as to whether he breaks it or not. It's not a question the way it would have been had Purdue only played 1 or 2 games in this event. It was really big for him on that front, and it's something that matters. It does. It should matter to Braden Smith. It should matter to the team, because it's an incredible career accomplishment. Bobby Hurley played in the early 90s. This record has stood for over 30 years. The one-and-done era has certainly changed things, but for Braden Smith to get this record is a really big deal for him. It's a really big deal for Purdue. It's really cool. It's really cool. But I do think the quicker this is checked off and behind him, maybe it's not as much of a forefront. There are times where it looks like Braden Smith may have a chance to score at the basket, and he's looking to spray it out to a 3-point shooter or toss it over to Oscar Clough or Trey Kaufman-Renn to get an assist out of it. Maybe not. I don't know. It looks that way at times, and you can't blame him. It's personal to want that record, and I don't blame him at all for that. But he was really good, and he didn't shoot very well in the Big Ten tournament. He finished strong in the second half against Michigan after he changed his jerseys, after he ripped his first jersey. I've never seen that before, where a player rips his own jersey in frustration, then admits to it in the post-game press conference. But if you haven't noticed by now, Braden Smith is just wired a little bit differently than other people. He's something else, but he was great from an assist perspective. He had at least 9 in all of these games. He had 16 against Northwestern. It was ridiculous. He was awesome. I thought Fletcher Lawyer was great. And he's a guy who so much of his perceived value comes from 3-point shooting, because he's the best 3-point shooter in Purdue history. But it wasn't just that. And he shot really well. Math on the fly here, he made almost 12 threes in this event, 6, 10. Yeah, made 13 threes in this event. He was really good, but it wasn't just that. He passed the ball really well. He has 5 assists against Michigan. He rebounded the ball well. I think it was the Nebraska game, where Purdue is kind of pulling away. Nebraska's looking to make a surge, and he goes up for a rebound. Someone from Nebraska comes in and fouls him as he's pulling down the rebound, and you could just see how fired up he was. Again, a senior bringing that energy for Purdue. A guy who often gets picked on for his defensive abilities was really good defensively. He played some of his best basketball. The UCLA game was great. The Nebraska game was great. He obviously hit a bunch of shots early in that Nebraska game to really help Purdue get off to a big lead. He was solid against Northwestern, and He helped Purdue get off to a really good start against Michigan too. He only made 3 3-pointers, but he made both of them in the first half. He scored 9 points. He was great. He was everywhere. This was some of Purdue's best basketball on both ends of the floor. All of these teams can give you problems offensively. Nebraska can really heat up, and Purdue holds them to 58 points. It doesn't let Price Sanford get going. It doesn't let Rink Mast get going. And you see Nebraska just struggle. It turned the ball over a bunch in the first half. It had 8 of them. A lot of that was Purdue's doing, which isn't always the case. It was really impressive. Purdue against UCLA, again, you're on tired legs, and that gets to be tricky. It's not an excuse, it's a reason, but you're on tired legs, and you hold UCLA to 66. You feel pretty good about your chances to win when you hold a team to 66, and then Purdue did everything you could have wanted against Michigan. Michigan didn't kill Purdue on the offensive glass. 14 second chance points is a lot, but it only had 5 in the second half. Purdue really salted that game away well. Michigan got its points in the paint. It was good. It didn't shoot great from 3, but you don't necessarily expect it to when you're playing your third game in a little over 48 hours. The tournament kind of convolutes that, and Purdue went 4 for 14. Purdue didn't really try to shoot threes. It took open ones. It wasn't forcing a whole lot. The defensive execution was really solid. You didn't see a lot of those mistakes. You saw Purdue playing a number of different coverages. At times it switched, at times it dropped, at times it hedged. There's not a solution that this team is just going to master. It still has the flawed personnel that caused some defensive problems, but it sure looked like Purdue communicated a lot better. Purdue's not going to be a high turnover generating team, but it forced enough against Nebraska to really make a difference. It rebounded well in the Big Ten tournament. It wasn't getting eaten alive on the glass. Oscar Clough and Trey Kaufman-Renn was great too. These seniors for Purdue were just marvelous in this event. It was really solid. The want-to was there. I'm not someone who will ever really criticize effort because it's difficult to quantify, and I think it's really hard to put a finger on what exactly that means. But Purdue was great from an effort perspective. Jack Benter was out there giving it his all. He was everywhere, and even at times against Michigan, he's a little outmatched. He's 6'6", and he's got to guard Merez Johnson or Yaxel Lendenborg or even Will Cheddar, who's pretty big. He's out there fighting, and you saw Casey Bartley's tweet that Benter needs wrist surgery after the season. He's out there fighting. He's out there competing. He hit a couple of massive threes late in the first half against UCLA. Hit a massive 3 against Michigan when Purdue needed it. And hit 4 big free throws down the stretch to help Purdue ice that one away. It was really, really good. It was everything you could have wanted from a Purdue perspective, because every negative vibe that you had about this team going into the event is now out the window. And you're feeling really positive. You're feeling really confident about what Purdue's capable of. I'm not one who sits here and thinks that Purdue just flipped a switch and started caring more, but it was the best Purdue has looked all year. And I can't emphasize enough, that Michigan win is one of the better wins Purdue has had in recent memory. I guess you can say any NCAA tournament win is better, and that's fair. Beating Tennessee in the Elite Eight was kind of the gold standard of that. When you went down, I think Purdue went down 11 in the first half and then won. But this is right there with any of them. Especially, Purdue goes to the locker room with 3 fouls on Oscar Clough, with 2 fouls on Trey Kaufman-Renn. You get late in the game with 5 minutes to go. Jack Benner and Oscar Clough both have 4 fouls, and they never pick up their 5th. That was really impressive. Purdue never let, I guess Yaxel Lendenberg had 20. It was a pretty quiet 20. Maybe it's just me. But Purdue never let Michigan really get going. Purdue controlled that game in the second half. It just remarkably impressive. A really, really impressive showing from Purdue. It's a big deal to win that event. I have no idea what's going to come for Purdue in the NCAA tournament. As I said, I'll record a podcast in 24 hours to talk about Queens, talk about the draw, all of that. But you've got something to hang your hat on from this year, even if it is just the Big Ten tournament title. It's not everything, right? It's not everything. There are still things you'd like to see more of. Purdue still, Daniel Jacobson's still really going through it. He had a good stretch of a minute or two against UCLA, but he's still going through it a little bit. Maybe getting out of the Big Ten will help him in the NCAA tournament a bit, but I don't think you're looking to the bench all that much if you don't have to. This starting five has just been terrific. It's been awesome. And if Purdue's guarding like this, and Purdue is executing this well on offense, for Purdue to have just 2 turnovers against Michigan, crazy. That is awesome. Michigan forces turnovers really well. That defense is disruptive as can be. It forces turnovers really effectively. It can really kill you, especially when you get inside. It's number 1 in the country in effective field goal percentage allowed. But when you don't turn the ball over, you're able to get enough cracks at it, and Purdue was efficient at it. It was great. It was just great in that game. It's a really big deal. It's a really nice accomplishment for Purdue. Of course, this is college basketball. This is the sport that we live in, where by the time we wake up tomorrow, I'm recording this here at 9:30 on Sunday night. By the time we wake up tomorrow and you get your office water cooler chatter done talking about Purdue winning it, this all goes out the window because everyone's talking about your bracket. Everyone's talking about Purdue Queens and, can that, will history repeat itself? Whatever. Or will that playing Missouri and St. Louis be a big deal? I don't know. But the attention shifts really quickly off of this. But this was a really nice accomplishment for Purdue. It looks like it's playing its best basketball at the right time. And it comes a week after you would say Purdue was probably playing its worst basketball at the wrong time. But that's the nature of this sport. I think you give all the credit in the world to Purdue's veteran leadership. You give all the credit in the world to Purdue being a tough team to prepare for on a short turnaround. That's something that I've always heard people say about Purdue in the NCAA tournament. When you have just hours to prepare for your next team between the Sweet 16 and Elite 8 or the first and second rounds, Purdue's not the easiest team to do that on. Because Purdue runs some complex stuff, especially with Braden Smith, how much he can do, how much Purdue can do in ball screen action, it's not easy to do. And Purdue just executed at a really, really high level on both ends. And as Purdue goes into this NCAA tournament, you saw it on the selection show earlier. Clark Kellogg has Purdue winning it all. What does that mean? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. But you saw what Purdue's capable of. You saw on Sunday afternoon that Purdue can beat anybody in the country. And as Purdue goes into the NCAA tournament, that's exactly how you want to be feeling. So that's about all I've got from the Big Ten tournament. Again, just a great accomplishment for Purdue. A really, really great showing. That was awesome. That was awesome to see if you're a Purdue fan. That was everything you could have asked for. So I'll be back tomorrow night. If you got questions, listen to this quick. Send them to me on Twitter. We'll break down Queens. We'll talk a little bit about Missouri and Miami. And then we'll talk about the West region, Purdue's path, all of that good stuff. 7:35 p.m. on Friday. Felt like it took hours for that Matt Norlander tweet to come through, but you've got your tip times. You get to pay homage to True TV, the one time a year that you remember True TV exists. So I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. Take care, and we'll preview Purdue's NCAA tournament tomorrow. Have a good night, guys.